This activity has 3 parts, and this is part 3. In part 1, we made a piece of patty paper that looked like that. We drew a line across the bottom, we creased it, folded it in half in the other direction to crease it. Then we drew a point on our crease, and then we folded it up so that the point and the line and the crease down the middle all lined up. In step 2, we traced a couple of those features and then did something else. For step 3, we need another sheet of patty paper that has some of the features on it that the first one did. So as with my previous video, with my previous step, I need to copy a couple of these features. Once again, I'm going to trace over just the line segment and the first dot that I drew. So I'm being very careful here to make sure that everything lines up, and then I'm going to draw a copy of my line segment. Now it looks like I didn't quite manage to get those to line up. So before I do anything else, I'm going to move the second piece of patty paper down so that the lines do actually move up. That's actually much more important than the fact that the layers don't line up. Now my lines are lined up. I'm going to trace over my first dot, not the one labeled V, but the one that's farther away. So now I have a second piece that's starting out looking like this, just a line and a dot. This piece of the activity, this particular part, is something that you may have done in high school or you may have seen on other YouTube videos. In some of these videos, the presenters suggest that you make marks along the line, and you can certainly do that. As you can see, I'm just kind of eyeballing, making marks along my line segment that are about evenly spaced. There's certainly nothing wrong with doing that, and it will help guide you if you need a little bit of guidance, but it's not strictly speaking necessary. What we're going to do next is take the first edge of the line that we drew in the first step and fold the paper over so that that edge, that end of the line segment, matches up with our dot. And then we're going to crease. Then I'm going to uncrease and refold the paper so that my first tick mark here lines up with the dot, not the edge this time, but that first tick mark. And then I'm going to crease again. Then unfold and move things along so that the next tick mark lines up, and crease. And then the next one. And the next one, and so on. If you had not made tick marks, then I would be recommending simply that you slide your paper along a little bit. But you need to be careful that the line is always over the dot underneath it. If you start to slide and your line ends up not over your dot, you won't get the shape that you need. As you can see, I'm still going from tick mark to tick mark, but it doesn't really matter if I have guidelines or guide marks on the page. What really matters is that I'm keeping this line over the dot as I go along. At this point, I would encourage you to pause this video and continue on your own. To save you from watching me do this whole thing, I'm going to pause on my end, and I'll come back when I'm about at the halfway mark. Okay, I'm almost halfway. I'll know that I'm at the halfway mark when my paper lines up nicely along the edges at the same time as it lines up the dot and the line. Unfortunately, I was actually just a little bit off there, so I've made an unnecessary crease here. That's okay, and nobody's perfect, so that won't lose you points as long as the rest is, as long as the features that we do want to see are there. Certainly not going to cost you points if you make a little mistake like that, so don't worry about things like that. But this is the point at which I can say, oh, I'm halfway, right? My paper is folded so that the edges line up as well as the dot and the line. When I unfold, I can see this nice curve starting to take shape here. But I'm not done yet. I can continue to turn my paper a little bit more and slide along, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and so on. I'll pause again, and I'll see you when I'm close to the end. All right, I'm nearly to the end. As you can see, I'm still just sliding my line along, making sure it stays over my dot, and then creasing. This will be my last one because I've run out of line. The second end, the other end of my line, is over the dot. I made my last crease, so now I can unfold. And you can see that the shape we end up with is this nice curved shape here. Now, because of how we're going to be using this for our portfolio, I'm going to suggest that you trace along the edge of the shape that you've just created with a pencil. Do it just with pencil for now. That way, if you make a mistake, you can erase it and fix it. There we go. Now it's easier to see the shape that I've created. It's a little bit off. The sides aren't the same. It's a little bit more on one side than the other, but that's okay. The point is that you can see that the shape comes about in a particular way. That's all we need to do with this layer, so let's set that aside. We need to go back to our first layer, so I'll call that my fourth video. Watch video 4 to see what to do next.